I saw some stats that was something like the highest percentage of people voting for Carney, the number one reason why they were voting for Carney was simply because they didn't want any association with Trump. So all these people that voted for Carney and their number one reason being like, oh, I don't want any association with Trump. Well, I just think that a lot of people don't know what's going on.
The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And that's Albert Camus. And that quote hits hard right now because in Canada, we're not only creating our future, we're reacting to it slowly and politely and powerlessly. I also think that it's important to have a partner that shares the same values and views as you. Otherwise, you'll be butting heads so hard that when making decisions about your future, it creates turmoil. So as an awake conservative man, it makes life so much easier to be married to a conservative woman who questions the narrative as much as I do. Because when you're trying to break free from the system that feels rigged, from the high taxes to the culture or the lack thereof, to the media gaslighting you daily, the last thing you need is friction at home with your partner. So this lifestyle, the lifestyle that my wife and I have chosen, freedom, building something outside of the box, the system, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, living as a digital nomad, it's already hard enough. You need alignment. You need someone in your corner who gets it, who understands you, someone who isn't trying to pull you back into the very box that you just crawl out of. So that's why today's guest is so powerful and has a voice in this space. So I'm thankful to be joined by Terri Boucher from Calgary, Alberta. She's a conservative dating coach and host of the Unhinged Healing podcast. Terri helps women navigate modern dating from a place of shared values, clarity, and no BS honesty. And today we're going to dive deep into what it really takes to build a relationship that supports freedom, truth, and personal sovereignty. So let's get into it. Terri, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that we've been finally been able to make this happen. I know I was on your show, ironically, the day of the U.S. election, and then here we are, a couple weeks after our Canadian election. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat about this.
Yeah, I think we're going to dive into a few different topics. But I mean, first, before we get into the topics, I'd love to maybe just have you tell us about your podcast, your business, how life in Calgary is at the current moment.
Yeah, so my life has changed drastically over the last 6 months or so. I was living in Victoria, BC. And last year I met my man, the love of my life, and now I'm in Calgary. So we did long distance for a while and then decided to move to Calgary. So I uprooted my life, came here, and lots of big changes came with that. Lots of big changes, moving away from my family, changing my environment, switching things up. And then on top of that, he bought a house right around the same time I moved out here. And so we've been navigating renovations and kind of all sorts of different changes, which has been very fun. And I'm finally feeling like I'm settling into my life in Calgary, which is amazing. So yeah, there's been lots of really big changes, which is exciting. And then it's, my relationship, and I knew this before I met him, but my relationship with him really shined a light on the fact that most women are really settling in dating. They're really don't know what they want. There's a lot of women that they really internally want their husband, their man, but they're too scared to ask for it, so they'll settle for something casual. Just a lot of women really struggling with dating and not finding their man. And so when I hear so many women talk about different dating stories and their experience and, what they may or may not be doing wrong in the situation, it kind of breaks my heart. And so I decided to dive into this because it's something I'm so passionate about. I made, finding my husband kind of my life's work the last 2 years. Really working on myself, really figuring out exactly what I wanted, being so clear on my values, what was important, my non-negotiables, all this stuff, intentionally dating, all of this is like so part of the journey. And so now I'm helping other women do the same thing.
That's amazing. And I mean, I lived in Vancouver for 8 years and then spent 6 months in Calgary, and I can say that obviously, like, the modern dating. I mean, I didn't find my wife until the pandemic. We're going back. Yeah, I would have been like 33, like early 30s, early to mid 30s, that era. And, the dating scene, even just as a man too, it's so, I feel like nowadays a lot of people are that social climber. They're just looking for something better. And I found it to be quite hard. And then obviously, so it's nice to see that someone is out there like that's promoting, what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. Because I think people, they have too much freedom in their fingertips of there's potentially something or someone better a quick swipe away. And I think people have realized how much depression comes with that, or they haven't realized yet, depending on who the person is. So I applaud you for that, because I think that we're starting to see the norm of coming back to what's real. I think, or is there a connection error?
I think you're still doing okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, sorry. It just says reconnecting on my side. I'll just edit that out. But I think when you look back on how things have transpired over the last, 4 or 5 years, I think it's so important now to find those values within yourself. And I think we're going back to those old school values more and more.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of people that are going back to the old school values. There's a lot of people that are springing the other direction as well. And, that's okay. That's okay. Like those people can date those people, and that's all right. But yeah, it's definitely so important to know where your values are at, what your standards are. And I think you're so right. You made a valid point in saying that there can definitely be kind of that depression in the swipe of the finger, and almost feeling like you have to pick the partner that is the most perfect partner, and rejecting people and letting go of people because they're not good enough, they don't quite have the most specific thing, or they're not what I envisioned, or whatever it may be. And I think what's important is, yes, of course you need to have high standards for yourself, but not so high that you're rejecting all love. Like not so high that you're keeping love at an arm's length. Because I think what's a commonality with, and maybe you can relate to this. Maybe you can relate to this because, you're happily married. But I think what's a commonality with like dating and finding your person is sometimes they're not exactly what you had envisioned. And you have to be open to the fact that they might not be exactly what you thought you were going to be with, but still maintaining, your standards when it comes to your non-negotiables. Like I would encourage women and men to have a maximum of like 5 to 10 non-negotiables. Like I will walk away if this is not existent in the relationship. But then beyond that, being open to other possibilities, because it can definitely look different, and that can be a good thing.
100%. That, like, I think you nailed that too, because I think that there's certain things about my partner, my wife, that I didn't know that I appreciated, that I needed, that I wanted. And there's obviously certain things that, there's certain boxes, but there's no such thing as the perfect person. The perfect person is how you can deal with their flaws, because everybody has flaws. So it's like, how do your flaws, each other's flaws, intertwine with each other? And I think, like, when I look back too on myself, like, we met, ours was such a weird accident. Like, we were literally a COVID relationship that just happened and blossomed out of thin air. We were just starting to kind of hang out. We were more like friends. And, she was going through a breakup. She was over in Vancouver from Ireland at the time. So she didn't really have a place to go because like the place that she was supposed to move into April 1st fell through because of, the COVID scaries of what was going on. And so I just said, like, just come stay at my place. Like, it's like obviously the phrase was 2 weeks to flatten the curve and everything was going to go back to normal. Well, that 2 weeks of us just kind of like doing everything together, which then turned into 4 weeks and then turned into 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, we're dropping L bombs on each other because we're our whole support system. And I think when I look back on it, it's like such a nice story that we met in such an authentic way. I'm grateful that I didn't, meet her throughout the whole like, Tinder thing, and not like there's nothing wrong with that. I know so many people who have met their partners on social dating. But I was grateful that ours was more authentic, and it obviously took like a fake worldwide pandemic to bring us together. But hey, you know what? I'll take that as a massive win. But one thing I want to obviously talk about is, you're based in Calgary. We obviously had a massive event in Canada in the last 2 weeks. You've been there in Calgary now for a year. I was there a year ago-ish. No, over a year ago. I spent 6 months there in like late 2023, I want to say. Like what over the last like a year and a half, like what's happening in Canada? I haven't been home that much. I've been home maybe like 60 days in the last year and a half to 2 years. But like, what's your honest take and where Canada is heading, and especially of the result of, our wonderful country voting in the Liberal Party again?
That's a good question. It's really, really unfortunate that Carney won, but it's done now. So I guess we will take it as it comes day by day now. Mm-hmm. Maybe it does end up being a positive. We'll see, because Trump had endorsed Carney for the sole reason of him believing he could, take over Carney more than Pierre, it sounds like. So maybe that is to a benefit, but I don't think it's going to be to a benefit to Canada short term. Like, I think mm-hmm. we're going to kind of go through it short term. Like if there is a battle between Carney and Trump, it's going to be ugly for Canada. So it's very, very unfortunate that happened. I think it's really insane that I saw some stats that was something like the highest percentage of people voting for Carney, the number one reason why they were voting for Carney was simply because they didn't want any association with Trump, which I think is hilarious because Trump, why am I losing my words? Trump endorsed Carney. So all these people that voted for Carney, and their number one reason being like, oh, I don't want any association with Trump, thinking that Pierre was an association with Trump or whatever mm-hmm. they're thinking. Well, I just think that a lot of people don't know what's going on. They need to get their brains screwed on. And so as for what's coming, I have no freaking idea. I hope good stuff. I think things are going to probably get rough before they get better. Mind you, Danielle Smith in Alberta, she is really putting her neck out, really fighting for Alberta and working on, having Alberta separate from Canada, which I think could be an incredible thing for Alberta. Alberta would be honestly the richest province, and I think we'd have a big influx in people wanting to move to Alberta. It would be massive. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think is coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, like, I mean, so much stuff to unpack here. I've been pretty vocal about it. Like, this is my first podcast episode, like, that I'm airing really in the last like 2-3 weeks since the election, because I didn't want to come on here like guns blazing and be hot, because obviously I was a little pissed off with how Canada responded. They begged for an election, and then they vote mm-hmm. in the same people. And yes, it's a different leader, but it's still the same. It's going to be the same ministers. Like, only in Canada can someone tell you to cancel their Disney Plus membership, which is Chrystia Freeland, and then resign, and then only to get voted back in. Like, it really doesn't make sense. And then, the whole riding thing of like Pierre's riding with 91 ballots, they increased his riding size and put a very big liberal majority part of a different riding into his riding. So it was just all these things. And you just start to really see the kind of the fuckery that goes on with Canadian politics and American politics, because I think it just seems like the Democrats and the liberals just get away with all this stuff. But if the conservatives and the Republicans were to do this, it would be Nazi-ish and communism and all this stuff. And, we're just expected to, roll with the punches. I think Carney he's actually, personally, I think he's going to make things look good on the short term. I think on the long term, I think he's going to fuck Canada so hard when it comes to the climate change. I think the real person that's going to save Canada, in my opinion, is Danielle Smith. I think Danielle Smith, I would not even hesitate to even, like, I think that she is what a leader looks like. She stands up, she speaks her voice, she makes it very clear. Is there scandals? Yeah, but there's scandals, of course, but I think it's depending on who the scandals are from and what they're calling a scandal. I think Alberta, and I've done research on this too, I've been speaking about this for a while. I think Alberta has potential to be a very prosperous nation, not a province, but a nation. I was just in Singapore 2 weeks ago, just before the election, just after the election. And seeing Singapore be such a small country, same size of population as Alberta, and they were, I think, and I don't know the full story, but I know that they weren't a sovereign nation back in the 60s. They had to fight for their independence. This country has no crime, low taxes, an unbelievable job market. They're exactly what multicultural should look like, because they have 4 national languages, English being the most dominant, and then I believe Chinese, Malay, and I don't remember the other one. I think it's an Arabic style of language. But that's what multiculturalism looks like. It's not segregation and putting people in boxes and, you got your blacks over here, you've got your Indians over here, you've got your indigenous here, and then you've got your Asian population here. They actually integrate these people. And I think Canada's done a really terrible job in integrating our cultures into society. And I think we should actually take a playbook out of countries that are actually leading the charge when it comes to, moving the needle forward. If we're gonna, nobody has an issue with multiculturalism or immigration. What they have is when we're still doing racism by segregating certain populations, no matter if it's like the gays, the whites, the blacks, or certain different age demographics. We always seem to find, or even political views, we just seem to segregate people, and we love to create conflict out of nothing. But I actually do believe that a guy like Pierre Poilievre was going to bring the country together. Comes from, adopted parents, a gay dad, an immigrant wife, seems to be like the values of what we are craving as a nation. But he just has conservative views, which is, I think, it doesn't speak to the globalist agenda. And I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I think it's time for Alberta to really take a stand, because I think Alberta has been funding this country for such a long time, especially provinces like Quebec and Ontario, when their equalization payments should be just as high, if not higher, than what Alberta produces, because they do have a larger GDP than Alberta. And foremost, they also, like Quebec, for an example, they basically claim almost exactly what Alberta pays into the equalization payments, but they don't contribute anything. And the only thing they're doing is they're basically giving all those resources to their province. So like, the $10 a day healthcare and all these social services, but they don't actually contribute anything to the economy. And yet when it comes to election time, Quebec and Ontario still decide the election, and then they block everything that Alberta wants to do to make money and to push the economy forward. And they always cry climate change. So I think it's time for Alberta to really take it serious. And that's what leads me into my next question is, do you think that Alberta will separate? And what is the vibe going on in the streets of people and because I mean, obviously, I know a lot of people. I've tried to talk to them. Some of them are like, oh, I'm not really paying attention. But for someone like yourself who is very awake, what are people actually saying? And is it possible that this could actually come to fruition?
Yeah. Well, I think that Danielle Smith had put out a petition for a vote, and that
Yeah.
petition needed 170,000 signatures. Last time I checked, it was already at 120,000 signatures or something like that. So
Hmm.
definitely there are people that want this in Alberta. Um, I think that, Alberta is a conservative
Yes.
province. And so I would hope that the majority of people here would want to separate and are not happy about the election. The interesting thing is that I really feel like there's a lot of people just not talking about it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that really don't know what's going on. They have no idea what's going on. Even prior to the election, I was talking to people about, like, are you voting? And it was honestly astonishing to me the amount of people who their answer was, I don't even know who's running. Like, I don't even know who's running. I don't even know anything about who's running or politics or whatever. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? Um, so I think there's a lot of people that are kind of living ignorance is bliss type situation. There's definitely lots of liberals here for sure. But mind you, I think that I see it a little bit differently because I'm in the city, like I'm in Calgary, and
Yeah.
you're going to find anywhere, any city center in Canada, you're going to find it's going to be liberal heavy a lot more. Like downtown city center, that's going to be a lot of liberals. A lot less liberals than somewhere like, Vancouver, Victoria, places like that. So I'm definitely, there's a lot more conservatives here. But as you go outside of the city, that's where you're going to see all of the people that are probably a lot more standing up for Danielle Smith to do this and really, really wanting Danielle Smith to do this. Inside the city, I'm seeing a lot of people that just don't care.
Which is crazy. And I think the Liberals have done a masterful plan and of execution to hinder media in Canada. Because I think the reason why people don't know is because one, they probably, if they don't live on social media, then their only news outlet is CBC. Like
Yeah.
really at the end of the day, like there isn't much out there. Like, you know, we don't have like a really pro-conservative, like Rebel News is Rebel News. And I mean, people can say what they want about it, but they're one of the ones that are actually pushing the agenda. I also believe the National Post seems to be pretty good, but some people in Canada just don't really care. Like they don't like conflict, and that's just the typical Canadian. They'd rather just blend in than actually do anything about the situation. So I'm not surprised. I think I know that it's going to take a lot for Alberta to actually separate, like to actually go through to get the referendum. I think she was smart to, I think it's obviously a ploy to get Carney to basically say like, we're not, or basically to think like Alberta isn't backing down. So to lower the limit of votes that she needs to go to referendum, she went from like, I think it was like 600 or 700,000 down to like 175,000, which then pretty much guarantees that they will go to referendum. Now, I don't know how Carney, what he thinks of that, but at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to cave. I think his climate agenda is his climate agenda, and I don't think he's really going to do anything about it. But what I hope is that it wakes people up in Alberta, because I actually do believe that Alberta has the potential to be like a Dubai. Like it 100% does. They have the oil, they have the minerals, they have the farmland. The only thing they are missing is sea access. And that's why you go after Saskatchewan and you go after Manitoba and you get the sea access through the Hudson Bay. BC, I don't see BC doing anything because their government is very, very, very left. But I don't know. I really hope that there's a solution, because I don't think Canada can survive another 4 years. And I'll be honest, my fear is that the way that the Liberals have constructed immigration and replaced baby boomers with immigration votes, they could be in power for the next 20 years. This was the chance for Pierre to really, really take control. And I just don't know if I see the Conservatives really being successful in the next election. Even with a weak NDP, I think as long as Quebec has their say with the blocs, they're always going to be Bloc Québécois or they're going to be liberal. They're never really going to go conservative because they're anti-Alberta. So it's kind of scary. So I think when we think about that, I think Danielle Smith is the hope. But there's an election. Her election's coming up in 2027, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they're going to the Liberals will try to do something to place another NDP person into the province. I hope Alberta is smart enough to really fight and vote accordingly to save, because I think really at the end of the day, they're the last hope for Western Canada.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree. I think Danielle Smith is the biggest hope that we do have. Yeah.
And I think that whether she goes down and she has a backdoor deal with Trump, I think there's an opportunity there. Are people actually in Alberta? I know when Trump was saying 51st state, like I know Alberta was kind of front and center of that conversation. Was that recepted well in Alberta, or what was the vibe when people were saying that 51st state and Alberta could be, at least part of that?
I would say that there is a lot of people that don't like Trump. And for that reason, people don't want to be the 51st state. Mind you, like I'm hearing from a lot of people that are swinging a lot more liberal, I guess.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the vibe, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's going to be a very interesting few years, and I mean, even in my recruitment business, my recruitment job, like I've stopped working mostly Canadian roles, and I'm now focusing on U.S. roles because I just don't see. I mean, I used to work a lot of positions in Western Canada, in Alberta specifically, oil and gas, like in the tech industry, and it just seems like the market is just on a standstill because their industry is being landlocked and handcuffed by the government. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting couple of years, to say the least, to see what happens, or even the first 100 days to see what Carney actually does. But maybe to like kind of segue more towards about like what you do, and and we'll go more into like the freedom aspect as we get along. But obviously, I want to learn more about like your mission and what you're doing. But like how as a coach. How do you balance being a coach for women while also calling out the Canadian modern feminism for how it's gone off the rails? Like, how do you balance those two? Because I'm sure that there's a lot of women that don't agree with what you say, but then there's obviously you're calling out a lot of that bullshit at the same time.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I don't have a specific balance. I definitely call it out because modern day feminism, I don't feel like is of any benefit to society. Same as, the lack of masculinity in men nowadays, it goes hand in hand. But I call out modern day feminism because that is the job that women can do. We can't control men. We can't control what men do with their lives or how they choose to change their lives. But what we can do is take accountability for our own energy, what we're doing, our own life, blah, 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 the whole shebang. So as for balance, I wouldn't say that I have a specific balance. I work with conservative women. And so, yeah, like there's a lot of conservative women that are very in their masculine. A lot of women in general. But I would say if there's a liberal woman that is like so anti what I say and she's single and she needs help with dating and blah, 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 I might not be the coach for her,
Yeah.
Because I just don't think I'm the right fit. So I'm not trying to like win over people that aren't my target market. I'm trying to find the people that are my target market. because those are the people I want to help, that know, like, that are aware that modern day feminism is doing harm, and maybe they
Mm-hmm.
have been themselves that they need to work on it, or they need to step more into their feminine energy or whatever that looks like, but they just don't know how to quite get there yet.
Yeah, and I think the same thing. I think it's really interesting too, because I think modern day feminism and modern day, like what people call like toxic masculinity, is actually modern day masculinity, where people, I think that's what the weak man is, the modern day masculine. Old school what they actually call toxic masculinity is real masculinity, and what a man
Mm-hmm.
should look like by protecting his family, having values, not being aggressive, but it's holding back and knowing when to speak up, when to use your voice. And my friend, you probably know him, but one of my good friends, he was actually in Vietnam while I was here, Lance Isios. We had a really good conversation on this on a crossover podcast a few weeks ago, and we talked about that very thing, about how society has labeled the real masculine man as toxic. And I would say the same thing about modern day feminism. That modern day feminism is just it's that kind of reverse of what toxic masculinity is. That those two go such in hand, that is, and I hate to say the word, that it's complete liberalism, but it is. And I think when you look at
Mm-hmm.
conservative people as a whole, our values are so deep in line with what we want, and it's actually very simple. We want to live a freedom lifestyle. We want to feed our families. We want to love our parents, love our kids, love our spouses, and just have community. Like, that's really, at the end of the day, that's all we want. But we're kind of forced all this other bullshit down our throats that is, you need to do this, you need to appreciate this, you need to accept this. It's like, I don't need to accept anything, because deep rooted Canadian, like, heritage of what our ancestors, what our freedoms that we fought for, are those very simple things of just community and love and respect. But respect is earned, not given. And I think that that's where we've gotten away from. And I think actually, and when I think about it, toxic masculinity is Justin Trudeau. That is what toxic masculinity is. That is what your role model is for for a masculine man. I would say that is a toxic masculinity, in my opinion. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I mean, that's where my and I would also say Jagmeet Singh as well. We want somebody who can really speak up and fight for what we believe in. And I just don't think that I think Canadians have gone really soft. And that's why when you look at like southern states, there's still a lot of real masculine people that are willing to fight for what they believe in. Whereas I feel like the toxic man is the person that would, go somewhere and do something very dangerous to society, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. 100%.
And I think that, like, when we look at the way that the US in general, over even their last 4 years before second term of Trump, what that did and how that brought out a lot of, you know, of their toxic masculinity, of people coming forward. And, there just seems to be a lot of issues. And I mean, I don't know, did you speaking of like politicians, but did you see that video floating around the internet today of Macron, Starmer, and some other politician in Europe, like the English leader, the French leader, and some other guy? They were caught on camera after their conversation with Zelensky, and there was a bag of cocaine and a little like cocaine spoon, like what you would see in Scarface. And as soon as they realized that the baggie was on the table, they immediately got all nervous. The one guy grabbed the spoon, kind of hid it behind his back, and then Macron grabbed the bag of cocaine and like grabbed it all discreetly, grabbed it, put it behind his back, and where they were kind of laughing about it. So like it just seems to be crazy that these liberal politicians are the ones that are doing the thing and having all these scandals, but yet calling out the conservatives for having the scandals that they're actually the ones that are committing. I don't know if I wanted to see if you had seen that, because I thought it was pretty funny. I saw it this morning.
Yeah, no, I hadn't seen that, but that is funny. And I do agree with that. I would agree that I feel like the Liberal Party puts on this like very polished, pretty face and
Yeah,
makes it look so good to Canadians and to liberals, but then behind closed doors, they are the most toxic. They are the most dirty party. Um
and they're vile
and
too, and they're
so
so vile.
yeah.
Yeah, they're so vile, and I mean, and I think that like when you look at you know at the feminism thing too, and it's like I find that it just seems to be like this global thing, and I love the fact that like you kind of, I don't know if you've said it, but I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you've believed that modern day feminism is a scam. I would agree with that. But what do you think it's done to men and women in relationships today? Because I feel like my opinion is it's created a lonely society.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. It's destroyed the nuclear family. So
Yeah.
the what is strong and what, the strongest unit is the nuclear family. So the feminine wife and then the masculine husband, and then they have the polarity. Sorry, I'm losing my words. Polarity between the two of them. They, have freedom and sovereignty over their family. They raise their children to have the values that they want to have. um, that is the strongest family unit. And now with modern day feminism and women feeling like their career is the most important thing, more important than having kids, than um, having a healthy relationship or whatever that looks like. We're seeing that with so many women. So there's so many women not having kids, choosing to not have kids because of modern day feminism. Um, and then on top of that, so many relationships that are just like, yeah, I would say lack of connection and not strong. Like they're like, this is a ploy that is very, very smart to pull people apart and make people weak. Um, yeah, like it's the opposite of the nuclear family, and the nuclear
Uh,
family is strong.
yeah, and I would say that this has been designed, and I mean this goes back to like the whole BLM movement of even George Soros being involved in that, and like his mission was to destroy the nuclear family because I think they the left wants everybody on assistance. The less people, the less innovators there are, the more people are in line to just basically make the rich richer. And people don't seem to understand that. And I find that like the nuclear family was, those values have been instilled, and it's like that's what people were coming to our country for, was to have that nuclear family. And for some reason, I don't know when the whole thing started to get lost, that whole, those values. And you know you now need to have a double income to, even to make ends meet, to pay your mortgage, to put your kids in sports, like um I don't know how old you are, but when I was in high school, like in the early 2000s, like, you know so many parents, or so many kids only had one working parent, the father, and they played sports. They had two cars, the double car garage, but they weren't loaded. It's not like they were like super rich. They just had a well-paying job that was still maybe under 100K back in like the early 2000s. But nowadays, you need to be making like mid six figures both to even just live a normal, comfortable life in Canada. So like this is where things just get really, really weird for me. And I really want to see the nuclear family come back, and that's why, you know, um, we've decided that Canada's not going to be home. Like we're exiting the country like this fall. The plan is to become a non-tax resident, um, find residency somewhere else, move my business out of the country. Because at the end of the day, right now, like what's there to be proud about? I mean, if Alberta was to become a sovereign nation, sign me up. I think that I would love to be a part of that movement. I would love to promote it. I would love to be a part of it. I would love to help build it. Heck, I would even love to fight for it politically if I could. Um, but right now, like I think I personally feel like, and I know that I'll get a lot of backlash for this, but I feel like I've lost the pride of being what Canada is, because we have lost what it means to be Canadian, and that what it means to be Canadian is to grow up in a normal nuclear family and to raise a normal nuclear family, and we don't even have the resources to do that.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, most people my age cannot even fathom the idea of buying a house. They cannot afford to live. Like it's insane. The cost of living is insane. So it is a double-edged sword because um the nuclear family is tough in Canada because for most people, you need both people working. And then therefore
Mm-hmm.
your kids are getting sent to daycare and getting raised by someone else.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so unless you're thinking outside the box, which is so doable, and I like encourage anyone who's listening to this that thinks it's not possible to think outside the box. There's so many ways to make money. There's so much money out there to be made. We just need to make a lot more of it in Canada to live here than somewhere else.
yeah. Like, I mean, I'm currently in Vietnam, and you would be shocked at the prices here for the very same things that you pay for in Canada.
Yeah,
Like,
I can imagine.
absolutely, it's a night. Like, I'm talking like some things are like 10 times cheaper. 5 times is probably the norm. We went out for dinner tonight and I, I had a nice Vietnamese dish, you know, 2 sodas, 2 full coconut waters. My wife she had a Russian dish because where we are is very Russian populated. And our bill came to like $22 Canadian for like
Insane.
4 drinks and 2 entrees. Like going for a haircut the other day, I had a haircut, a shave, a beard trim, and it was literally $11, and they were floored like that. I asked for the beard trim as well. Like, they don't charge a lot for their services here. Would I say that I'm taking advantage of it? No, it's just that's how they live their life. Do I tip more? Yeah, of course, because like what's an extra couple bucks for me? When you go to the grocery store, like our grocery bill is probably at least cut in triple, like by triple, like it minimum. Like and all the meat that we buy is still imported from Australia. So it's like it just shows you that if you want a can of Coke, it's not $4 in Canada. Like it is in Canada, it's literally 50 cents. So it just makes you really, really realize like how much we've gone backwards in our country. Um, and I'm just grateful that I've been given myself the opportunity to come over here. And I know that it's a communist country here. It's considered a communist country, but one thing that I will say is they take care of their country. They take care of their people. The streets are clean. They're not dirty. But one thing is they have pride. That people are very proud here, and I really love that. And people want to they want to share their experiences with you. Whereas I feel like when I come back home, everyone's just so wrapped up on trying to make ends meet for fair reason. But I think that we need to, if we can get back to like our old stuff, school roots, and like I think if we could go back to like that late 90s era, 80s era, I'm an 80s kid. So I think that that's where life should kind of teeter towards, because that's when I feel like people were happy. People were, maybe there were struggles, but I feel like people were just genuinely happy. And I just feel like we're a long way from that. But um, and I think that that's what we got to do in Canada. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going backwards. I mean, what would you say? Like, what do you think like Canada needs to do?
Oh, that's such a tough question to answer. I would say that Canada needs to come together. Like the same
Hmm.
as what Pierre was talking about. Canada
Yeah.
needs to come together. We have seen so much division since COVID. I don't know about you, but prior to COVID, like I was not overly into politics. I wasn't
Yeah.
it didn't crank me a whole lot. Um, but I don't remember feeling like Canada had that much division prior to COVID. And now I feel like there's so much division on everything. So much division on whether it be vaccines or politics or your health choices or whatever it may be. There's just so much division. And prior to all of this, I feel like it was kind of, oh, you're making that choice, no problem, it's no sweat off my shoulder. You're allowed to make that choice and I'm allowed to make my choice, and we can still be like one society. But now we've been so pit against each other during COVID in the last 4 years that it kind of taught our society to be very divided, like oil and water, like we're very separated. And that's just not the way that Canada is going to come back together. A divided nation is a weak nation. So they are doing a great job at that. So I think, honestly, like having more conversations about this stuff, having open conversations with people who are on the opposing side, and listening and, trying to listen to understand, not to change your view or your perspective in any way, shape, or form, but just to try to connect, trying to, become one, because that's the way it was before, before, prior to COVID. If I told someone I was not getting my flu shot, they went, oh, okay, that's your choice, And now it's like mayhem.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I would also say too is, you mentioned that before COVID, that you weren't really political. Well, when I met my wife, we were both actors. And so like we were like support the newest thing, right? Like everything was all about like pleasing everybody, even though that I knew deep down that was not that was not me. Like I believe in truth, honesty, and like, and it was really started to push me out of the industry. And I kind of had one foot in, one foot out, because you couldn't make me say the things that like you have to believe in. Like you go on set and people are talking, and like I'm a pretty vocal person. And I love a healthy debate. Like I love a healthy debate. And there was times where I had to bite my tongue off because people are talking about, things that I don't believe in. But I had to act like I believed in it because I was worried that like I would be shunned away as a newer actor trying to make my way into that industry. So like I was kind of brainwashed in a lot of ways to be able to buy that industry, even though like, I found the views outlandish. I knew it would be career suicide to speak out against it. So I was fortunate enough to have a partner who was waking up at the same time as me. And so that's where I to kind of even segue back to where, the whole partner thing and conservative dating. But I feel like a lot of people are stuck in like victim mode for years and like blaming other people and I think the pandemic kind of indoctrinated that into people that they're victims and that they're owed something. So like what was that first belief you had to break to start climbing out of it? Like you'd mentioned, you weren't really into politics before then.
So do you mean directly correlated to dating, or can you rephrase that?
Like I guess like before like your wake up call to like that you needed to start paying attention to what was happening. Because like for me, like it was seeing how ridiculous things were in the film industry, and then the pandemic, and then
right,
having somebody to talk about that with my partner and realizing like we have no fucking freedom. What was that moment for you that woke you up?
Yeah, absolutely. So so mine was like very early on when COVID started happening. And I will say that I have to give tribute to my parents. My parents have always been very awake. But and God bless them. I feel like I was kind of liberal prior to COVID. Like prior to COVID, I was that feminist. I like that modern day feminist. That was me. I was very masculine. I was, all of this stuff. Had definitely would have voted liberal. And I remember having a conversation with my dad about Trump, and this was way, way back, like prior to COVID, and thinking, oh my gosh, I just can't believe that my dad is a racist. I can't believe that my dad's racist and sexist. Like, this is crazy. And it's funny to look back at that now. But so my parents have been awake my whole life. They've always kind of dribbled that stuff into my brain. And I've always kind of not listened, been like, I'm rebelling against you guys. But one of the things that that has been instilled from my mom is, she's always been pretty holistic and anti-pharmaceuticals. We've always gone the natural route when it comes to that kind of thing growing up. And so when the vaccine was getting rolled out, my initial natural response was, well, I don't really think I need it. Like, I'm a very healthy person. I've got a healthy immune system. I've never really been one for pharmaceuticals, and I don't really think this is going to start me now. And so I kind of thought maybe I'll get it down the road. But for now, while it's a new thing, it's experimental, I don't want to get it. I'm going to hold off for as long as possible. And so I did, and not coming from a place of at first it wasn't coming from a place of oh, the government is trying to poison us, or the government is it wasn't coming from that place. It was more so just coming from, I've never really taken pharmaceuticals, never really been one for it. I'm not going to start now. This is experimental, which is a valid point of view. That should totally have been a valid point of view. And then when the mandates started happening and things started cracking down and it started becoming mandated that you get the vaccine, that's when I started opening my eyes and realizing there is something up here. This should not be mandated. We should still have the autonomy over our body to make this choice. And because I don't feel like I have the choice, there's something up here. So I kept pushing back. And the more that I stood my ground and pushed back, the more I woke up, and the more I found my crew and my people and the people that were also waking up, and, all of that. And it was, I'm super grateful. It was very helpful having my family all on the same page and on the same, on the same wavelength in that sense. But I do remember, in the beginning, it feeling very lonely and being like, oh my gosh, no one else has the same views as me. And everyone else is just getting this blindly and not thinking about it, and not, they're just like sheep, just getting in line and doing this. It's crazy. So I would say that was kind of my wake up moment, is when the mandates started really getting enforced.
Yeah. And it sucks because I know what I know what that was like, obviously. And I applaud you for standing your ground. There was a different situation with us because my wife is from Ireland, and they were telling her that she would never be able to travel to go home because she would never be able to get on an airplane again. And I witnessed the fear of that running through her veins, her body. She's also got a grandmother in Moldova, which is right beside Ukraine. And, her grandmother is near and dear to her heart. And she didn't think she was ever going to see her again. And I didn't want to get it. But then, I was, and I wish I obviously we both wish we did get it. Luckily we stopped at number 2. And I feel like most of the damage was done on number 3, number 4, number 5. But we also, as soon as we realized, the negativity behind it, we started detoxing everything. I was taking we were taking the wellness clinic stuff, the stuff that Kaylor promotes, before it was even mainstream. I was already on it for months, both of us, the nattokinase, the curcumin, all the bromelain, everything. We were taking it. So I'm positive. It gives me hope that we hopefully shed a decent amount of it. I haven't had any issues, knock on wood. But I remember that fear, and they did such a good, again, when you think about the things that the Liberals have done, it's just, everything is just, it's just perfect planning to create fear into people. And I hate to say it, but it got me. It got her, and then it got me because and not that I was worried about anything else. It was just if I'm going to be with this person, I'm going to have to travel with her too. There's certain things. And I really applaud the people that really, really held out.
like, but we were looking at options to try to get like fake vaccine cards from Mexico, all that stuff. Like I was in like the weird Telegram groups trying to put this stuff together. I felt like I was just like, I had that fear, like if I get caught, am I going to go to jail? All this stuff, because I saw what they did to to people, and I was reading the stories, and I'm like, damn, like, do I really want to put myself through this and like be? And so it sucks because, and then you're told you couldn't go to work at certain positions, and in acting world they were testing, and then you had to show your vaccine card, and like it was just, when you think about it, it was just like one of those perfect plans. Like just like the way that they do the same thing with replacing baby boomers with immigrant voters, which is what they've done, and they're master planners, but liberals are really good at execution. And that's one thing. I wish they would just put their execution towards really good humanitarian shit, because they would actually have the power to do really good things in the world, because they are really good at executing things, even if it's like an outlandish thing of maybe a shady way of executing it, but they are really good at following through. And I will say that, but they do it in such a negative way. But I guess, like, to start wrapping this up here, I really want to know, because I mean, I have my plan, and I have no problem sharing my plan. But I'm curious about what your plan is with Canada going in this direction. If things don't change, like, how are you and your partner handling this, and what does the vision look like in like the near future or your long-term plan that like you're prepared for?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. We don't have a crazy plan in place yet, and I think the hope is that Danielle Smith is going to really step it up, and Alberta is going to be a great place to live. The amazing thing is my boyfriend is a dual citizen, so not she. I don't know why I said that. He has U.S. citizenship as
Oh,
well.
wow.
So that is amazing. That's incredible. His all of his brothers have US citizenship. His mom is a US citizen. So there has been kind of talk about, if things really went sideways, we could definitely take off to the States. It would be a little bit different for me. There would be a process. I'd have to get my green card. I wouldn't be able to, make money, the whole shebang. But, I think one of the big things is just working on increasing my online income. Because
Yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar or not, like if you've ever heard Corey George speak or listened to any of the
a little
podcasts he's
bit. Yeah.
done. He makes a really, really valid point in the sense that like you can, you can plan, you can prepare, you can do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But the person who's going to be the most prepared is the one that has the most money. Like if you think about during COVID, the people that like he didn't get vaccinated, he was still traveling. He was just chartering planes, which is like insanely expensive, something like 80 grand or something like that. But that's what he was doing, and he had the means to do it because he has built his income so much that he does have true freedom. And of course, he talks about being prepared with, guns and supplies and food and all of this stuff too. And we definitely have some of that preparation as well. And you need money to do that too. You need money to be prepared with guns and gas and this stuff as well. But when it comes down to it, if you can't afford to leave Canada, or if you can't afford to figure it out, or whatever it may be, then that's where your freedom lies, is with the lack of resources. So that's what I would say is like the number one thing is just increasing our income, becoming, incredibly wealthy so that we're kind of untouchable.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. The online income is where things are at. Like, that's where things are going with me. Like, I mean, I think there's so many people are in the online space. I mean, I work in recruitment and I've got a good business there, but ultimately, like, I want to increase my online footprint even larger, because that's where things are. My wife is fully working online, like 100% working online. And she's on the verge of like a pretty big breakout right now for her business. She's been going now for almost 3 years, which I'm super proud of her for getting to this point. It's now to the point where it's like, where like Grant Cardone said, it's easier to 10 times your income than it is to double your income. And that's kind of where she's at the cusp of trying to figure that aspect out. So like it's on the way. And I look at where with us, and I think it's amazing that you can have that access to the States. I think that is a really good outlet. My wife's Irish, so she's got an EU passport. Eventually I will have my EU passport because it gives us flexibility to move to, like, I don't know how many countries are in the EU. Is it necessarily the number one place? No. I think ultimately, like Canada, if Alberta can really, like you said, Danielle Smith can step up her game, like that's where things would lie in Canada. But until then, I don't want to rely on that. So I think for us, like I mentioned, I'm going to try to set up our residency in Paraguay. You only have to visit once a year to maintain your residency in Paraguay. You don't have to have your banking in Paraguay. You can use your tax ID in Paraguay to have banks in so many different countries around the world. And once you're a non-tax resident in Canada, I think the most taxes I think you would pay in Paraguay is like 3 to 5%. So that there is some plans in place there. And then obviously the business aspect, setting up a Wyoming corporation or a Panamanian corporation for the online business. And that just gives us the opportunity. And once the online businesses are at a place where, we can fully be global nomads or global citizens, I think that's the biggest goal, because I think once you have multiple passports, you can literally go anywhere, because if you don't like certain things, and it's all really at the end of the day, really want to just be able to provide for the future family that we're going to have. And I think that when we look back on Canada, I don't want those liberal like school, not laws, but like schooling and indoctrination kind of enforcing our kids to learn certain things. And and I think that homesteading would be a cool thing to get into, and I think Canada's a really good place for that. So it's really just like being aware and really just figuring it out. Like, we're actually thinking about starting a YouTube channel about being like how we can become like sorry, how do I explain this? Starting the process of showing people how you can become expat families before you're even having kids, and going through the process of like visiting all these different places, grading the school systems, the quality of life, the cost of living, and ultimately like going through the process of like where we're going to have our child when we do have kids. So like really starting to focus on like showing people a way that there is an outlet outside of the current situation. I would love to move to the States, but it would have to be certain places. But it is obviously, you got the luck because you've got that access to getting a green card. Your husband's got the second passport. I wish that Canada could have like the European Union type, where one passport can get you through to multiple different countries. So as a 51st state threat, that's the thing that I would accept. But I don't think anything in Europe would really tickles my fancy, just because of the way Europe is gone. We have looked at some like islands, like maybe Italy, some of the islands in Italy, but really at the end of the day, the cost of living is just so much that we would really want to just kind of like figure out like what is the best choice. So
yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. And we've definitely talked about kind of living that life in, like Costa Rica or Mexico or something like that, and raising our kids down there. Like, I think that would be so cool. But yeah, not sure yet. I think that's such a cool idea to start a YouTube channel about kind of living as an expat before you even have kids. That's something I would watch for sure.
Absolutely. And I think it's just one of those things that we just have to take it by stride. We're building our businesses, we're building our brand. ironically, like when we started our journey of like coming up with like trying to get the escape of Canada, we created the brand called, and we haven't done anything with the brand. It was called NextDay Lifestyle. And then when my wife started her business, which she does like system strategy, system automation for businesses, where she like automates all their processes and onboarding systems. And she's a systems guru when it comes to that. And so she created her business called NextDay Executive. And then now I've got NextDay Nomad. And so we're actually thinking of going back into like the NextDay brand of like NextDay Lifestyle or NextDay Travel. So just kind of piggybacking off of that. It's just been a lot of work. Obviously, we're taking lots of footage. It's just, the amount of hours in a day to try to get this stuff done, obviously podcasting and work and all that stuff. But eventually we'll get there. We've been traveling around quite a bit. So we've been seeing a lot of cool places. And I just hope that I wish people could do the same thing. I wish people could see what is out there, because I really do feel like that when you go traveling and you go to places that you would never really expect to go to, you really open your eyes up to like what is out there versus to what your current reality is. And I think it's really refreshing to see some of the things, because when you go back home, I think there'll be certain things that I'll be really happy about, but there'll also be a lot of things where I'm like, I could really not have to deal. I really would not like to deal with this type of shit. So, so it's like the best of both worlds. But yeah, no, I know that we've obviously done this, before on your podcast, but I would love to obviously like do this again, bring you on and talk about more about your journey. Because I really do think that the mission that you're spreading is really, really important. I think it's really important for young people and any young people out there. I think it's really good to kind of get back to those real true values. And I think we need more people like you spreading that. And I love the community of the people that, our mentors have created and our friends have created. And you see the people that are in our communities that are creating the same message, but different brands. And it's just really good to have that awareness for people. And so I couldn't thank you enough for coming on today. I think that it's really, really heartwarming to see somebody really speak out against something that could easily ridicule you for your opposing views.
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words. That's really sweet. And yeah, I'd love to come on again. This has been so much fun to chat with you about all this. And yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. But before you leave, obviously just maybe take a moment to just like let the audience know where they can find you, your podcast, social media, all that stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So my main Instagram is Terri_Boucher. That's where you'll find all of my coaching content, all of my anti-feminism content, all that jam. And if any of this resonated with you, my DMs are always open. You can reach out to me there. I also have a tallow skincare business. That Instagram page is Fat and Sassy Tallow. And then I have my podcast, and the podcast is the Unhinged and Healing podcast. So you can find more of me there as well.
Amazing. I actually had no idea that you had a tallow business. That's cool. That's really neat. Yeah, I had all these questions to do like a little rapid fire afterwards, and I knew that you were big into tallow. I didn't know that you had a business in it.
I do. Yeah,
that's really neat. That's really cool. We'll have to talk about that next time, because I'm really, really interested in that. I love tallow. I use it frequently. I think it's like one of the best things out there. So, but yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. I also want to just say thanks to everybody for being a part of this journey. We're heading into a month and a half from now. We're at the 1-year anniversary of the NextDay Nomad podcast. Hopefully we'll get to the 52 episodes, which is like the goal that I had set. I know I took a few weeks off after the election. I knew that it was good for me because sometimes you just need to just take a little bit of a break. Things didn't go the way that I had hoped for the Canadian election. So it was good for me to just kind of reset, think about what's important to me, and reevaluate the direction that I want to take my life. So I appreciate all of you guys being a part of this journey. If this episode resonates with you, hit that like and subscribe button down below. as this is also being recorded for YouTube as well. Reach out to me in my DMs. I've got a free mini course out there called the Mindset to Momentum. It's a mini course that'll go through mindset work. You'll be able to evaluate all your skills from all the jobs that you've ever done, and then cross-reference all those jobs to the top 10 online businesses out there today that you can then decide and actually see how close you are to making your dreams a reality. So that link is also down below. Reach out to Terri for anything that she has to offer, her Tala business, the podcast, and her coaching business. I love you guys.